Opera reached its peak in the Romantic era. The works created during this period are a major part of the performance repertoire today. Two styles developed. France had the grand opera that had crowd scenes, ballets, choruses, and elaborate scenery, and then the opera comique, which had some spoken dialogue and simpler plots and music. Correspondingly, Italy had the opera seria, which was a serious opera, and opera buffa, which was the comic opera. Italy fostered the development of bel canto singing, which emphasized beauty, purity of tone, and an agile vocal technique. In the later 19th centuries, both countries developed operas whose plots dealt with the lower classes and sought to depict life more realistically. In France, this movement was called naturalism. The most famous composer from this movement in France is Georges Bizet. While Bizet was gifted musically from childhood and won the coveted Prix de Rome at age 19, he wasn't a successful composer in his lifetime. His most impressive work was a daring production of Carmen, which was initially blasted by the critics for having a highly sexual leading lady and for her brutal murder on stage. Just 3 months after its premiere, Bizet died of a heart attack, so never found out that his daring work had become internationally acclaimed, performed in 23 countries, including the United States. This number, the Habanera, is from the opening of the opera where Carmen, a beautiful and seductive gypsy, sings to an admiring group of men, telling them, in effect, that love is fickle, a rebellious bird that cannot be controlled. It foreshadows the love and betrayal that happens later in the opera. The aria is often extracted and performed on its own just because it is so popular. You have the translation for this number in your ebook. Italy has always been known for its passion for singing and has often been at the forefront of opera. Two of their finest composers during this era were Puccini and Verdi. Puccini, Giacomo Puccini, came from a long line of composers, and he had little fame and no fortune until he created the intensely emotional La Bohème, also part of this nationalism movement, which in Italy was called Verissimo, or truth. So yes, everyone is poor, cold, and starving, and in the case of the leading lady, Mimi, has tuberculosis. The plot of this segment from the end of Act 1 is quite simple. Mimi knocks on Rodolfo's door to ask to light her candle and faints when she enters. This provides the backdrop for gorgeous music that is extracted and used in concerts. Notice that after the arias, the audience erupts in cheers and applause. They even applaud during the high notes. This is never done in instrumental music, but in opera all the time. Great enthusiasm. Another knock your socks off moment from Puccini is the aria Un bel dì from the opera Madame Butterfly. This opera tells the story of a young geisha in Japan during World War II who falls in love with an American serviceman. They are married. He doesn't think it's a real marriage. And then he is called back to America. She raises his son every day, looking to the horizon for his ship to return on Un bel dì, that beautiful day. You'll notice that this soprano is Chinese, with excellent Italian diction. Classical voice students need to study several languages, as often their music is not written in their own language. Learning perfect pronunciation is part of the drill. Giuseppe Verdi was the other sterling contribution to opera by Italy. He used real-life characters in dramatic, action-filled situations, real blood and thunder melodramas with plenty of opportunities for exciting, lusty, ferocious melodies and rhythms. Verdi wrote during the time that Italy was just a cluster of connected principalities, and his impassioned music echoed the call of those who yearned for a unified nation. When the country was finally formed, Verdi served on its first parliament. In addition to opera, Verdi also wrote an absolutely gorgeous requiem and some chamber and orchestral works. He was so beloved by his native country that when he died in 1901, nearly 250,000 people took to the streets and sang his chorus of the Hebrew slaves from his opera Nabucco. Verdi saw the Jews as a symbol for oppressed Italians. And so they sang this in a solemn procession to honor him. This selection, which is from your ebook, please be sure to study it there, includes one of Verdi's most tuneful arias, La Donna è mobile. In this scene, a duke justifies being untrue to women as he designs to seduce a young woman, not knowing that the woman who has just given herself to him, as well as her furious father Rigoletto, are watching him unseen. The quartet that follows involves the scene with these 4 characters. Next, we traveled to Germany, where the opera scene was very different. The primary composer there was Richard Wagner. As a young man, Wagner wanted to be a poet and a playwright, but was overwhelmed by Beethoven's music and decided to become a composer as well. Rather than call his works operas, he called them music dramas, showing that his focus was on the plot. You won't find standalone arias with thunderous applause in his work. His music is tied to his story, which flows continuously, and his plots are very different from Italian operas. Instead of dealing with the passions of the lower class, Wagner's music dramas dealt with mythological characters, usually having larger-than-life interpretations. In his work Lohengrin, he tells of the mysterious knight by that name who was the keeper of the Holy Grail, a heaven-given chalice of supernatural power. Lohengrin rescues Elsa, then marries her, but Elsa must swear never to ask Lohengrin's identity. Tempted by villains, she asks, and he disappears. So this larger-than-life meaning is interpreted as Lohengrin representing divine love, and Elsa the weakness of humanity unable to receive that blessing with faith. As we mention that opera, though, I need to complete your wedding playlist. You already heard the traditional recessional from Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream. Here is the traditional processional coming from Wagner's music drama Lohengrin, of the wedding of Lohengrin and Elsa. And surprise, there are words, but they're in German. You'll recall that the Romantic opera is considered the era of extremes. Well, Wagner was one of those extremes. While typical operas lasted around 3 hours, Wagner music dramas were so long that they needed to be performed over several days. One technique that he used to unify these massive works was the leitmotif, a short musical idea that was associated with a person or an object or a thought in the drama. We are all familiar with the trilogy The Lord of the Rings in literature and film. Well, Wagner did it first. He had a gigantic music drama cycle of 4 segments called The Ring of the Nibelung, complete with gods, giants, dwarfs, and magic fire, again giving a larger second meaning of damning society's lust for money and power, which is pretty much what the second meaning was in The Lord of the Rings. Wagner's music shifts the emphasis from the singers to the orchestra, which was huge. Let's remember that there was no sound amplification for singers in this era. They had to project over this huge core of musicians. Generally, Wagnerian singers blew out their voices early in their career. This is the love scene from the Valkyrie to give you a feel for this style of composition. Your listening guide will tell you as each leitmotif is played, so be sure to study that.